Hey everyone, I am here with Caitlin McCombs. It's been a couple months since I've done one of these videos, but Caitlin is a rock star client. She has been through such an amazing transformation, and I wanted to share it with you guys today. We're going to be going through her whole story from where she was to where she is now and what things are looking like for the future. I just can't wait. So just kind of a high level, Caitlin was very much trapped in a glass ceiling kind of situation. Overworked, underpaid, and not being recognized or given credit or rewarded for the massive contributions that she was making. Now she's on her own. She's got so much work that she can't even handle it all, and she's having to decide which jobs that she actually wants to take. And she's looking at, in just a couple months, looking at an income twice of what she was at before, doing less work on her own terms. So it's really been amazing, and it's gone out into the other areas of her life, because as I always say, this stuff is comprehensive, right? One area of your life is going to bleed into the others, and so her story is an amazing example of that. It's super inspiring, and so Caitlin, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
So awesome. So Caitlin, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to before you'd ever heard of Oculus or even considered the idea of career freedom. Take us back to where you were, what the background is.
Okay. So I had been working in a corporate job. I had been doing my own work in regards to some, like, looking at different psychological things and emotional tools and things like this, but I was having a really hard time grounding it. And I knew that I definitely did not want to be in my job long term.
So for the audience, what was the job? Just so they know what you were doing.
Oh, I'm a civil engineer.
Yep. Okay.
And I'd been working at that job. I was getting a lot of good experience, and I also, in being an engineer, you need a certain amount of experience under a licensed engineer before you can sit for your license. So that was another reason I was putting in that time. But I realized very quickly it was just not a long-term thing for me. Very long hours, a lot, like very high stress load, and workload just kept on. Workload and responsibility was increasing like exponentially year to year, but my pay was not like riding that same increase. So yeah, I was really frustrated. I was getting burned out. It was definitely impacting my health. It was impacting my relationships. I would work all day, and then I would be working into the nights because of offices I worked with in other countries, and being the only person to do all the coordination and stuff. It was like I couldn't just put it off till the next day. I had to be pushing things through. And I felt like any off time I had, I was just resting and regrouping to try to the next day. And weekends were just like trying to recover, to do it all over again. So I was just not really happy. I didn't have personal time, and I didn't have time for relationships. And like I said, it was really impacting my health, and it was just, it was wearing on me a lot.
Do you mind going into a little bit of detail for the audience, just at a very high level? Because I know the health thing was really important to you.
Yeah. So, so I had been dealing with, so I have had some chronic health issues, but it was very, very triggered by stress. So I was kind of like riding this hamster wheel of like my job would be, I was keeping my job because of fear of money and needing to, like pay for my living expenses, which would include certain treatments and like food and things of how I dealt with my health issues. But then it was like, the more I was working, I was spending more and more money on these things just so I could like function well enough to keep going back to the job. And it just became this like hamster wheel of I'm doing more and more and more, but then I'm having to spend money on treatments and these other things just to be able to go back and do it again. And it was just, it like financially was not making sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I remember you telling me that story, and I was very, it hit because I definitely can, I've done, my background obviously is in
Mm-hmm.
bioengineering, and
Mm-hmm.
I've looked at the cellular pathways and everything that happens with stress, and it's brutal.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen in my own life, not to the same extent you did, but it does suck. It is very frustrating to be on that
Yeah.
hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Um, so I know a couple other things that I remember you told me about your work environment. One is that it didn't seem like it was really fair or commensurate when you look at other people in the office versus you, how much
Mm-hmm.
you were putting in, how much you were contributing, how much they were contributing, and then what was happening as far as raises and promotions and credit and all that kind of stuff. Do you want to share a little bit of that?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm located in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, like there's just different teams, different branches on the different islands. And there was just I was kind of pigeonholed because I'm on Maui.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the only engineer in the office here, civil design engineer at least. And what was I saying? Oh, so I didn't have like for most of my time there, I did not have peers to be able to say like that we were working on the same thing as far as I could kind of compare my performance or my contribution. I just was like given more and more and more stuff, and there was just an unlimited amount that we needed to do. So I was just like going, going, going. And my feedback, it was just like feeding this thing of never enough, because there's always more to do and it was never ending and there's always deadlines and always this. And so it was just this like vicious cycle. Um, but then over the past few months, I had interactions where I could see I was working with other teams more, and I could see other people's workloads and hours, and realizing that I was managing so much more work and putting in so much more time and had so much more responsibility, and I was like at a much lower rank than a lot of these other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really frustrating. And then eventually another person got hired that was not performing anywhere near what I was doing. It was actually kind of didn't have that great of an attitude towards work, and I ended up taking on a lot of their workload, but they were getting paid more than me, and that was kind of like I was already planning on leaving, but that was the absolute last straw for me. And
Okay, so that was the
yeah,
decision point. That was the rock bottom.
I cannot stay
This is
here.
done. This is over.
I'm just like I feel like I'm in a movie right now. This is not real. So ridiculous. So yeah.
Yeah. So then you make this decision. Hey, I'm gonna leave. I've got to figure
Yeah.
out a way to leave.
Yeah.
And what did you look for? What did you search for? What did you try before you ever met me and came to Oculus Institute? What kind of methodologies? What did you look at and try?
You mean as far as work? Like what was my plan to transition working?
Yeah, what was your plan? Did you work with any other coaches? What kind of avenues did you explore? Tell us about that kind of search process.
Okay, so I knew that I wanted to do freelance because I was just like do a lot better being my own boss.
Mhm.
So I had I think explored some. I'm trying to put that was a few months ago, so I'm trying to think. I know I since I live in a small community, I knew that I had built some connections and would be able to do smaller projects just for people around here. But I also had tried to look into how to do that freelancing, or you see the advertisements for like how to make a second income, like doing
Yeah.
whatever whatever the thing is, like affiliate marketing or whatever. So I actually, now that I think about it, I spent like some money on a couple of courses, but I never really did anything with it because it was just I like it just didn't resonate that well and didn't really make sense, and I wasn't using I didn't feel like that good of a use of my skills and talents. Like I didn't really feel like
Mhm.
I was building something or really passionate about it. And it was just sort of like, it was just sort of like a shot in the dark kind of thing. There was no like really good structure, really good steps. So I was kind of floundering a little bit, but very determined to get out of there.
Hey, determination also counts for a lot.
Yeah. But I also realized that I had a lot of fear around it. So I was in this like place that was causing me a lot of turmoil because I realized how badly I needed to leave, because it was like, the scales kind of eventually flipped to where it was costing me more than I felt like I was, receiving from that situation. Where when I first started, I needed that. It was good for me, like at that time in my life. And then I was just like, this is like very obviously the scales have tipped the other way, and I got to figure out, like, I just knew that it was not a sustainable thing for me. And I could not afford it health-wise. I could not afford it financially. I could not afford it like relationally. And so it was like a very serious, like, okay, we gotta, I don't need to like see this go on for any longer to know that it's not what I want. So it was just a matter of, identifying the steps I needed to take to do that, which is when I found you.
Okay. So tell us about that, right? So you're looking through the affiliate marketing, you're like, oh, this isn't making sense. And then tell us about how you stumbled upon the Oculus Institute and that whole thing.
I found you on a Facebook ad and looked into it. I was really intrigued because it seemed like a very holistic approach. It wasn't just like, you're gonna make $1 million in 2 months, just
which we all know is
3 easy steps. I was like, there's so much more substance here. So that's a good sign.
Always good not to be making false promises. That's always, always
the crazy, absurd marketing. And I watched your webinar info video. Oh yeah, and I watched the ones on the page and was just like, this makes so much sense. It was just like immediately deeply resonated. I was like, this is how I think. This makes sense. I can't remember specifically what they're about. I think it was just the overall kind of looking at what your life looks like over time, and we're like on this hamster wheel and working, and then spending all these money on all these things, and you get to a certain point and it's like, where did all the time go? You're not happy. You're just, the whole kind of all too common corporate wheel that a lot of people live in.
Yep, the rat race.
Like, yes. I was like, this guy gets it. And then I had a call with you, and that went really, really well. And I appreciated that it was like very customized to like my situation, my needs, my talents, my personality. It was like, it hit so many different points. It was skill set, it was personality, it was let's look at, the psycho hacking. Like, what are your mental blocks to this? Which, everybody has that. So I was like, yeah, let's dive into that, because obviously there's some work to do there. And also just very grounded steps of this is how you freelance. These are the templates. This is, there's so many really concise, clear, efficient tools and a lot of support. So
yeah, well, so I think you're well suited to it, right? So like I'm an engineer by training too, as you know, and there are a lot of people out there who like to do just kind of like, here's a grab bag of stuff, or we'll figure it out. We'll just figure it out on the spot. I like reliable systems, right? Yeah. I'm an engineer. You're an engineer, right? We like reliable systems, repeatable processes that work every time, as long as they're used properly. And so that's something that I remember you saw and you understood and you picked up on very quickly.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I get it. Oh, this is a system. It's A, B, C, D. It's like,
my brain is so happy right now. How did you do this? because a lot of those things too are often one or the other. I have like dived into other, you know, books and like psychology and stuff on, you know, like psychology, emotional, you know, processes or perspectives and how to, you know, uh, clear your mind and liberate your mind in different ways, you know. But sometimes, at least my, I remember talking to you about my experience with that was I kind of went so far that way and I was having trouble, like fully applying it at a really grounded way. Like, okay, what's
Mhm.
the actual item of the action I need to take in my life, you know?
Yep.
And just identifying more specific instead of being in this like cloud of, you know, um, I don't even know how to describe it, but some of the, I'm just saying like some of the stuff can get a little abstract. And so I loved the system and loved, well, on the call, just hearing there's a system of like, okay, we identify each of these things, and this is how we break them down, and this is how we dissolve them. And then there's just like, all right,
Yep.
that makes sense. Let's do it. It's like, it's very empowering to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I absolutely. And I think so. I think some of the audience might, because every time we do these videos, people like gush about the internal work, and a lot of people not actually like, no, I want to hear how you're making more money.
Oh,
And so,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think it's important to cover both, right? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, you
Yeah.
know, like the external and the internal, you can't have one without the other. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Because if you're the
Right.
external, you give people a perfect system, they're not going to follow through on it if you don't do the internal work. And if you
Totally.
just
Yeah.
give them the internal, then, as you say, it's not grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, I agree with you that most internal journeys, most mindset work, most of that stuff is very vague and very general. It doesn't say, okay, listen, we have stresses. We can group them into 4 different mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive categories. And there's a technique to get rid of each one. Like it's very,
Yeah.
you know, hey, just think positive. The world will be nice to you. And like that kind of thing. You know, and that's not sufficient. Is it better than nothing? I mean, I guess, but it's not going to get you all the way.
Yeah, it kind of like raises your awareness to things, and then you're like, all right, well, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is a fear, this is a grief, or whatever. You know, you realize you have these things, but then it's like, all right,
Yeah, you can't just like
now I'm just living in it.
right. I
Yeah.
think what a lot of people they try to do is they try to just pretend they're like, okay, well, I had this. I'm not supposed to have this. I'm just gonna pretend I don't have it anymore. I'm gonna fake it till I make it.
Yeah.
And that just suppresses
That's
it.
toxic.
Yeah.
That is not good. Don't do that.
Yeah. And actually this is something you and I were just talking about this just yesterday, right? Is that if you take something, if you take that stress and you suppress it, then your body will start to do weird things. Right.
Yes,
And
all too well.
right, yeah, as you know all too well. And if you just leave it there, then you'll start to do weird things in the general environment. So if you deal with it and actually dissolve it instead of burying it, then you can actually have your body be healthy and not be engaging in erratic behavior. So
yeah.
But so let's talk about the external journey a little bit. So from the time, because you were still at your job, how long was it after we started working together that you got your first freelance contract? Do you remember? I don't remember exactly. I have a guess.
Maybe like 2 or 3 months.
I was going to guess 2 months. I think it was about 2 months. The first one you got was actually through your network, which I advocate people go through the network.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
You got your first one through your network, I think, pretty quickly. And then because you weren't going all out. In the first month, you were just kind of finding your bearings, doing the internal work, making that progress. And then you got that first contract. What was it like when you realized, wait a minute, I can earn my own money?
Yeah, I was just like, this is so ridiculous. Because I just remember getting you know, like the amount of what people would pay me to do something where like my mindset was so just like devaluing my own work because it was just like never enough, never this, that I didn't realize. It's like I had become so disconnected of realizing that like my skills are really valuable to a lot of people, and like not a lot of people can do what I've learned to do, and they'll pay good money for it. And I remember I remember, well, this was on an Upwork job, but I think someone paid me. I did something. It took me like 15 minutes. It was not even a thing. And I charged them, it was a repeat client. So I was like, just charge me this. And they paid me more than what I even asked for to do something that was so easy. And I was just like, oh
How
my
much
God,
did they pay you for the 15 minutes?
like $50
Yeah. So that extrapolates to
for
the
literally,
equivalent of $200 an hour, right? I
yeah,
always like to, if you can get it to if you're freelancing, right? If
yeah,
you're at $200 an hour, that's $400,000 a year, 2,000
yeah,
hours a year work week,
yeah,
right? So if you can hit $50 to $100 per hour, not per 15 minutes,
right,
the
right,
$50 to $100 per hour, you're looking at 100 to 200 grand a year,
yeah,
right? Which for most people is enough to get by while you sort everything else out.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
yeah,
So, okay. So you mentioned Upwork. Let's go back to that because I remember
right,
you got your first freelance job through your network, right? Which I always advocate, but not everybody necessarily has a network, or the network isn't necessarily big enough to provide an ongoing pipeline of leads. So I always recommend that people use various freelance platforms, whether that be Upwork or TopDoll or some of the others. And in your case, for your skill set, Upwork was the one that we matched you to. And so tell us about that experience, because most people struggle a lot with Upwork. The majority of people don't earn $1 on Upwork.
okay. Well, I had really good proposal templates from working. So that was awesome because I think that that's one of the most important things, because like otherwise you don't really know how to structure it or how much time to spend on it or what to really write and what's relevant. And I just remember once getting a few of those going, you can like block out different things. So when you're doing more, you still have to create it specifically for whatever the proposal is, but it just becomes a lot more efficient. So that was good. My first job was like I said, a civil engineer, but part of that is doing CAD work. So my first Upwork
CAD
job.
for the audience, because you and I know
Oh,
what
computer
computer
aided
aided
design.
design.
Yes, yeah. Um, so I was also applying for, just doing drawings and things like that, or sending out proposals for that. And I got a job doing like patent drawings for these guys, which was like super fun. I was into it. Like I signed a non-disclosure, and they're like inventing something, and I mean that was so in my interest and whatever. Anyway, so I was
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
yeah, and they were like so appreciative, and like I said, paid me well for my time, and that was also just that experience of feeling really appreciated and getting paid for actually the amount of time that I put in, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just, I'm sure many people can relate to when you work at a salary job, and if you're not getting paid overtime,
Oh,
your
I can
hourly
relate to
rate
that.
your hourly rate is just tanking. and then you like calculate it out, and it's just absurd. It's like, I mean, I can just go do like a whatever job. I don't know why
I
I'm paying.
remember when I was at BCG, there was a period where I was in Israel on a case, and I was consistently working 80 to 100 hours a week, like
Oh, yeah.
consistently. And so if you look at it, like I penciled it out at one point, and I realized that for that period in Israel, I was making the equivalent of $25 an hour. Right. And I was like, wait a second. Like I'm doing, like grand corporate strategy for like the biggest refinery in the country of Israel. Like
Yeah.
flying around,
Yeah.
they flew me out there, all the way to the other side of the world. And I'm like, and now I'm working for like, something that you could get managing a store in Walmart or something. Like I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
You do that, yeah, but then yeah, totally. But I think too, you can probably relate to this. There's a lot of like image and like
Mhm.
attractive kind of perks that can sometimes come with
Yep.
corporate, and
Yep.
I think that they try to do that to like this is like what you get instead, or like consider that as part of your salary. And
Yep.
it can be fun for a little bit, maybe, depending on your personality and your personal responsibilities and whatever. But it's not like, bottom line for me is like, I want to get paid for my time, and I don't really want to be flying to other places and not be getting paid for that time, or flying to, because that costs me, it costs me, like I said, health stuff, relational stuff, just expenses, you know, they cover some expenses, but not all. And it was just, yeah.
Yep. And so when you were just working on Upwork, what was your average hourly rate that you were getting paid? I mean, I guess harder because you're still doing Upwork stuff. I know you're on a little bit of a break to like chill and decompress.
Yeah. I think it was like between 65 and 80.
Okay, so for perspective, right? 65
before getting my license, because
right. So before getting your license, so 65 to 80 for perspective is $130,000 to $160,000 a year equivalent, right? Which is pretty good considering, you know, previously you were making, I think you said 76.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's pretty good if you just look at an hour to hour basis, and that's when you take into account that you were working fewer hours doing that.
No drive.
No drive. You can work from home.
Like uncomfortable work clothes and all that.
Not having to deal with the office politics.
There's a lot of perks.
So, okay, awesome. And then, you know, you just mentioned the license. So let's read people in on what you meant by that, because that is an important component that we kind of like planned out and said, hey, listen, you know, this is something you should go for. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I know, like, I didn't quit my job as quickly as some of the other people who go through the program do. For me, so in becoming a professional engineer, part of that is getting 4 years of experience under a licensed engineer of the same discipline. So I still had some time to go on that, even after I'd already gone through your program. And so I was like, I'm hanging in, you know, until I got my required experience. And my application went in, and so I'm taking the test in a couple months. And so for explanation of what that is, that's just like, that's your professional accreditation of like, you can stamp plans, you can sign things. It's your like, it's like I guess the equivalent in other fields, like doctors have their license, lawyers have their licenses. But basically anything that needs to be constructed or officially signed off on, you have to have that like license as an engineer.
Right. And so I remember when we were talking about that, we were saying, hey, listen, does it make sense for you to go get your license? And we're like, okay, well, if you look at the two different kinds of work, if you move up from like drawings and CAD and you move into actually like signing off on stuff, what's the change in the pay that you can make for that?
A lot. I know that easily, I mean, for I don't know if I know specifically on Upwork yet, but I know that people pay even for you to just like review and sign and stamp things, you know, like hundreds of dollars. I know that the hourly rate, you know, when I think about hourly rate here, I think minimum would be $150 an hour if I was to do like bare minimum local jobs. But, you know, people charge a lot more. So, yeah, it definitely was worth sticking out a few more months.
Yeah. So on Upwork, it tends to be, just because I know it tends to be between $100 and $200 an hour for licensed engineering sign-offs. One of the things that they do, though, is they do make it a lot more deliverable based. So instead of paying per hour, they say, we'll pay you $2,000 to review and sign off, right? Like, okay, well, this is going to take me 15 hours to review. So, you know, and you do the math, right? And there's, I'm sure you've gone and looked that if in the unusual situation that you didn't have local work, your ability to get work like that on Upwork is going to be probably more than you can handle.
Yes. So the only thing is that your license is by state.
Yep.
So it's something to consider.
Oh, okay.
But you can easily pay for your license in another state. You don't have to like go take the test. You can just
So you get that. So you pay the fee, the $100 or the $200 or whatever. Get the
but I mean, it can open up a lot of doors for sure.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So let's see. So we talked a lot about the external journey. We talked a bit about the internal journey. Is there anything else that you wanted to share as far as like the internal journey and some of the progress you made? Because I know some of it's like super
Yeah.
private, some of it you may not want to share, but like just I want to
Right.
give you the space.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. I think that honestly, I think that I was surprised by the amount of transformation I went through. I would consider myself like a pretty self-aware person, and I've done a lot of like other internal work just throughout my life, other programs and other things, just because it was the mechanics of the mind have always been like really fascinating to me, and philosophy and all these things. But I remember like just there's some stuff you just carry around for so long, becomes so embedded in your identity, and you're so weighed down by it that you don't even, I mean, this is a lot of things, you just don't even realize that it's cannot be there, or it's just so deeply embedded you're not even actually aware that it's there. So yeah, I just remember feeling like so much lighter, like this whole just opening happened, and also knowing that um, you have tools like that you can always come back to whenever a stress comes up or an emotional event. If you have some traumatic event, or if you have grief, or if you have fear of something, like to know that it's not just here's this one time like experience or relief from it. It's like a very real, very lasting, like this is now dissolved. And if another one comes in, which often they do, um, you immediately know how, like, where to go and how to handle that. And I think that to me that is so 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 valuable, because it's you can use that forever.
Yep. Yep.
And that's something in doing other programs and working with other people and all those things. It's not like that. One, it's more clumped together because you're not identifying the separate pieces. It's more just kind of like, if you're in an emotionally distressed state, it's just kind of like, oh, there's all this stuff going on and you don't know how to like separate it or what to do with it, and you're mostly just trying to calm, and maybe you understand um, what's going on from different perspectives, but it's not like, I mean, we already touched on this, but just the very like you're the very broken down. This is going on. This is going on. This is going on, and dissolving it, dissolving it, dissolving it. Um, which just like having that very concise, actionable tool set, I think is just beyond valuable for anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people in the personal development area, a lot of coaches, they look at things as, hey, I'm going to fix this problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is great. That's, better than, I mean, hell, there are some people out there who aren't even interested in fixing their problems. They're just interested in getting paid, sadly. But I
Yeah.
think that this is a situation where it makes a lot more sense to teach somebody to fish than to give them a fish.
Yeah.
Because if you solve their problem, but you don't teach them how to solve the future problems, then the only way that works for them is if they, hang around you forever and are in, your client list forever, which I'm sure is, to some extent what many people want. Right. And I'm, by all means, like if somebody wants to be my client forever, as long as I can keep adding new value to them, I'm happy to do that. But like for me, adding value isn't like, I try not to add one-off stuff. I like want to add like, hey, what's the lifetime value? Like this is a skill set you have forever, as you say. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss. And I think even from my end, I mean, there are a lot of clients who view the tools as like kind of like a check the box thing. Like I'll send it back to them and I'll be like, hey, you want to make these updates so that we do this correctly. And they view it as kind of like, hey, it's a homework assignment. It's a check the box. And they don't get as, I really try to emphasize, especially towards the end, that these are tools, right? And that's something that you got and that you really internalize and that you utilize on a daily basis. I think that's one reason why you've had such amazing results.
Yeah, for me, yeah, I think it's so valuable, but it is uncomfortable.
It is. It
Can
is.
be uncomfortable, but like, um, that when you compare, going through a little bit of discomfort to the gift and freedom that you feel on the other side of it, it's just like absolutely unmatched. And
Yep.
and to know that it's just like there's no comparison. Like, why would you not do that, And then to
Yep.
know that you can continue to do that, you know. Um, I know I said that, but I just think
No, that's actually, it's an
it's
amazing point.
super, super valuable, you know, like, and I've seen people spend years and years and years doing other methodologies, and it's just kind of like, I'm still going over here and seeing this person, and you're just kind of just like looping, and it's not, you're wasting time and money, and it's not efficient. So
Yeah, efficiency. As engineers, we like
I know,
efficiency,
I was
right?
just gonna say that. System. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a great point, and I think that this is broader even than just the internal work. There are a lot of people
Yeah.
who what they do is they avoid something that's uncomfortable in the short term, and then they end up paying a price in the long term that's 100x because they don't deal with
Yeah.
the immediate discomfort, and so then they deal with this long-term simmering, festering thing. And this could be people staying in a job they hate for 40 years. It can
Yeah.
be not dealing with an emotional burden, all this kind of stuff. And so they may try to go to a quick, easy fix, like, hey, you know, I'm going to go to this person who gets me razzed up and pumped up and makes me feel good, or I'm going to go eat some ice cream because that makes me feel better right now, or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you don't go in and deal with that root cause and take that short-term discomfort, it costs you a lot more in the long run.
For sure. Yes.
So I think that's a fantastic point.
It's the core.
So let's catch up with where you are today, right? So if we look at, you know, the before and after, before you were in the rat race, you were doing this job. Now, you know, where are you? What's going on?
Well, I quit my job like 3 weeks ago and have been taking a little bit of time off. But in that transition, you know, in leaving, I had a couple of options like on my radar, but after actually leaving, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and be interested in working for me, like to the point where I was like having a hard time even. I was like, is this real? Am I being punked like right now? So it was, I mean, that's been really, really good and surprising. And so I'm at a place where, you know, I'm having meetings with people, and I get to choose my work. I get to choose how much I want to work. I get to choose what projects and who I want to work with and what days, and I get to, you know, just like negotiate my rate. And yeah, it's like, it's really freeing. So
Yep. I know we were scoping it out just recently. We said in a couple months you're going to be looking at between 150 and $200,000 a year, right? So considering that a year ago you're at 75, right? Working what 50, 60 hours a week, you're looking at 150 in 40 hours a week on your terms without any of the office bullshit.
yeah, yeah, it's an upgrade to say the least. Yeah.
And how has that affected the other areas of your life?
Oh yeah.
Health and relationships and all that.
Yeah, you know, I think I went through a week of just kind of regrouping, and then since then I mean, I had health issues. You know, people react to stress different ways, like maybe your stomach or your whatever, wonky stuff happens, but I had stuff where it's like, oh, it just has gone away. And I'm happier. I have more energy. I get to go do stuff outside. I get to like build relationships with people. I have so much more energy and freedom, and yeah, just my overall like quality of life has gone up significantly.
Yep. I think one thing people underestimate is how much the body can heal if you remove chronic stress. So, I mean, like for me, as you know, like I got hit by a car about a year ago. I got hit by a van that made an illegal turn, and I woke up 41 feet away. I should have been dead. I was told that, you know, I would need all kinds of surgeries and knee replacements and stuff, all this kind of stuff. But you know, 6 months later, I was doing CrossFit with no problems. Like I made a full recovery, and you know, that was like a big thing that I think I credit a lot of that to a lot of the work we've done. And I know in your case, like, you know, your health challenges very nearly killed you at one point.
Yeah.
Now they're totally gone.
Yeah, so I mean, that's been chronic stress. I think I was definitely under chronic stress like my whole life, and eventually that came to a point for me where my health got really bad, and so it's been something I've been recovering from, and that's just like monitoring and trying to ultimately heal. But after leaving, it was like, all right, back in the game,
Back in the
have a
game.
life again. Yeah,
It's
so
fantastic.
feels
Well,
good.
Caitlin, it turns out we actually did get a question from the audience.
Okay.
Someone was asking, I don't know if they've been watching since the beginning because we
Okay.
did go through this earlier, but they said, so was your leaving a leap of faith or did you plan your exit? Well, so I can answer that. That it was definitely planned. So Caitlin came into the program and we got some quick freelance work going to just, get some, demonstrate the viability. But because of the professional engineering certification, which she talked about earlier, she stayed on until she was able to get that because that was going to give her the scope to basically double her income potential. And then once she had that, then she planned her exit and it was time to go. So we planned all this out, in the course to make that happen because the career planning is a big focus of this, right? I mean, I field a lot of questions from people on, hey, should I do this now? Should I do this then? Like, what's the ordering of this? Like, that's a component of the course.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and having that like safety and plan is what made it like, all right, I'm walking away. I didn't have any like hesitation or worry. And like I said, more stuff came in than I even had planned at the time that I gave my notice. So that was good.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I actually generally recommend against just saying, screw you, I quit and walking out. Sudden quitting is generally not ideal, Michelle. I actually recommend that it be planned out. There are cases where if somebody has enough of a financial cushion and okay, she missed the beginning. Yeah. There are cases where if somebody has enough of a financial cushion and the job is toxic enough that I will say, hey, listen, it's just time to go. Oh, and this is a great question from Jasmine. We'll jump to that in a second. But yeah, but unless somebody's in a very particular situation where the job's really toxic and they've got the finances to sort it, I normally don't advise just leap of faith quit. I normally advise planning it out and as I said, I'm all about systems, process, reliability.
Yeah.
So Jasmine asked a question, knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time to before you joined Awaken, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Go back in time before you before I joined Awaken.
I was going to ask a similar question. What advice would you give to the audience members who are watching now?
Oh, I see. Oh, gotcha.
Who are watching now?
For some reason, I understand that. Okay. That like to believe in yourself and that you don't realize what's possible, especially like when you're at a state, which is like the state I was in before starting Awaken. When you're in that chronic stress state, your brain is like it's operating at it's like very inhibited by all these stressors and like your energy levels, all these things, and you can't really see what's out there. So if I was speaking to myself at that time, I would tell myself that, even though like I kind of had a sense of it, and just the possibilities of what can open up after going through the course is beyond what you can even like see and feel at this time. And if you already know that what you're doing is making you unhappy and costing you, like don't wait. Why would you put yourself through that? You have one life, you know.
Awesome. Cool. Any other bits of guidance, thoughts, or advice that you'd like to share with the audience? This is your time to like share all the wisdom you've
Let's see. I don't know. I mean, I guess kind of on that note, I think the best investments that I've made are when I like invest in myself. You know, and in doing that, like I kind of went into this like thinking of I am my own business, like as a human, and just as you would invest in something external, like investment or a business or whatever, like I would recommend to like consider that perspective towards yourself because you are the vehicle of everything that you create and have access to. And I think when you realize the and obviously have discernment in what you in what you
Right.
invest in and who you trust. Disclaimer. But you know, if it is a super solid, reliable system, like it is just so absolutely worthwhile. And like, give yourself that gift. You are worth it. And all of the external stuff that can open up after that, because of how much you've opened up in yourself and relieved yourself of stress and limiting beliefs and old pain and all these things, is just, it's infinite, you know. I know, you know. And I know you had a similar experience, so yeah.
It's amazing. So awesome. Cool. Well, so if anybody is interested, you know, I always want to give people the opportunity. If you're interested in talking with me, I cannot guarantee that any given person watching this is a great fit to become a client. And if you're not, I'm not going to steer you into that. I'm going to steer you towards whatever's truly going to serve you. But if you are a great fit, if you're someone like Caitlin, and you've got a skill set that's really valuable and you're not being paid what you're worth and you're dealing with a lot of chronic stress, and especially, as I said, if you have that skill set and you're willing to put in the work, those are the two big qualifiers. Like I don't do the kind of stuff she was talking earlier. Well, hey, listen, let's do affiliate marketing for 10 hours a week and make $1 million, because that's nonsense. Like those are unicorns. No unicorn chasing. But like if you've got a valuable skill set and you know you're in a burnout job and you're looking to see, hey, listen, how do I get out of this? Then I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to jump on the phone with me for free. Right. So you can go to www.oculusinstitute.com/scheduling. It's crawling across the bottom of this little video. And you can go and you can book a free call. It'll go into my little calendar thing. And, you know, we'll get on and we'll just talk. What's going on? Right. Where do you want to go? And what are the next best steps to get there? As Caitlin said, very personalized, very focused on you. And if I'm the best person to help you, I'll let you know. I'll let you know what that looks like. If I'm not, I'm just doing whatever will truly help you. Because at the end of the day, I believe that if you serve enough people, everything else takes care of itself. So awesome. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. Any parting word, Caitlin, before we sign off?
No, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. Absolutely fantastic to have you. So, and you've been not just on this video, but just it's been absolutely fantastic to know you. You've been a phenomenal client to work with, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Sean. Super grateful. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.